Okay, let's start with some context from this morning's Job reading. The Job passage starts out by saying that the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind. But it does not say what Job has asked or demanded of God. Job, I must say, is a pretty brave fellow. And I think a lot of this is because he's got nothing left to lose. He's embracing this mentality of, what have I got to lose? I'm just going to put it all on the line. He has lost everything at this point. His flocks have been stolen. His servants have been murdered. His home has been destroyed by a whirlwind. And in that same storm, his children were killed when his home was destroyed. And his health is ruined. Until this point, until all of these things have happened, Job has lived a pretty normal, upper middle class kind of life as head of his household and, in a sense, king of his own realm. He has his faith, he has property and a home, he has a job, he has a wife and children, he has friends. He's a good, normal guy, just trying to make it in the world and stay in his lane. When he loses everything, some friends come over to sit quietly with him for 7 days and 7 nights. This is a custom in Jewish culture whenever a death has occurred. At the end of those 7 days is when things start to go even more haywire. It would be, to put it gently, the only good thing these friends do for him is sit quietly with him for those first 7 days. Once they're over, they resort to platitudes and reason, trying to find sin or find a fault that would have caused God to smite Job in the way that he has been smited. As a result, Job also loses what is left of his support system, of his friends. And then Job's wife questions and leaves him. Y'all, this is not looking good for Job. And as you can see, he truly has nothing left to lose. This is when Job, in poker terms, goes all in. He is distraught, and he is angry, and he is scared, and he calls God to court. If anyone ever tells you that you're not allowed to or you shouldn't question God, just point them to the book of Job. Job does not just question God. He subpoenas God. He really subpoenas God. And when God doesn't show up, he keeps calling him to court. And somehow, he makes it out of this alive. That brings us to where we are today. Job has been calling and calling out to God, who has not been answering. And as God has not answered, Job has become angrier and angrier at the silence until finally, God answers Job. And the way God answers Job is that he starts to put Job in his place. Job's questions, though, are no different than our own. Why do bad things happen to good people? When we do everything right, why does bad stuff still happen to us or to our friends? How can God let a steady stream of bad things happen to someone when it seems like any one of those things could break a person? God's response to Job is very interesting here. God calls Job's attention to creation, to all that God has created, and to the ocean in particular. So here is some important information for us to have. This was as true then as it is now. The ocean, the water, the deep, is where creation has begun. Creation begins in the waters, in the deep. And to this day, the ocean makes up 97% of all the water on the earth. And it makes up 95% of all of the earth's biosphere. So to say that in a different way, the ocean is where everything began, and the majority of creation on planet Earth is the ocean. I have to say, as a Texan who has grown up and lived most of my life in landlocked areas, this is difficult to fathom. But therein lies the beauty. To comprehend God's great creation, God pushes us outside of our bubble of familiarity and comfort. Job, in today's passage, has been pushed well beyond his bubble of comfort and familiarity. And now God takes that push a step further as God answers him out of the whirlwind. This whirlwind is the same whirlwind that has collapsed Job's home, killing all of his children. And God's answer to Job: be humble. Like we discussed earlier, Job was just a normal guy with a home, a wife and kids, a job, some friends, just a normal guy trying to make it in the world and stay in his lane. When all of a sudden the rug is pulled out from underneath him and he loses all of that. This could happen to any of us, really. Few of us make it through our lives without any challenge to our faith or to our understandings or our belief systems. But many of us are not faced with quite the same amount of loss all at once as Job is faced with. Although some of us are. Many of us are. And Job subpoenas God and asks, why? Why would you let everything be taken from me? Have I not served you my whole life? Have I not stayed in my lane and fulfilled my role as the head of my house and provider for my family? What have I done to deserve this? Why, God? Why? For those of you who were here last week or maybe listened to the sermon online, God's response to Job here is actually quite similar to Jesus' words in last week's parable. Hey, Job, it's time you learn some humility. Do you know what it means to be humble, Job? How about you all? I know some of you were here last week. Do you remember what it means to be humble? It means we are all just dirt. We're all just dirt. God's response to Job is wisdom. God presents this majestic, this wisdom that feels almost like it's another world, but really, it's Job's own world. It's our own world. The words knowledge, know, comprehend, and understanding are used as God questions Job after Job calls God to court. God brings Job's attention to creation and invites Job to take a look at the intricate ways in which creation is woven together, the delicate balance that is present in creation and in our ocean in particular. And yet Job is just dirt. We human beings are just dirt. Just one tiny, tiny piece in this great creation. God is calling Job, is calling me, is calling you to recognize that, in the words of theology professor Ted Hebert, the sea is not a monster of chaos that threatens our life, but a huge living organism that originated life and that continues to sustain all life on earth. As we talked about during the Word and Wonder for All Ages with the young people, the ocean is filled with life, with fascinating things that provoke wonder and enjoyment and awe. And Sylvia Earle, the chief scientist for the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration from 1990 to 1992, she discusses how the ocean drives planetary chemistry. This thing with all these tiny little creatures that are fun to dig up, or shells that are fun to pick up and fascinating to paint or bring home or scoop things with. It also governs climate and weather, and it provides the cornerstone of the life support system for all creatures, all of creation. God calls us to recognize that this world is not our world. This world is God's world. The creation that God wove intricately and delicately and powerfully together. It is the creation that God invites us to enjoy and also to care for, so that our children, our grandchildren, our nieces and nephews, our cousins, and all people from all time and places will be able to continue to enjoy it as well. May we care for the oceans God has brought forth, the oceans that are the beginning and the basis for all of creation and all creatures, so that all may have the opportunity to be in awe and wonder at the beauty, at the delicate balance, and provide the amazing way that all of these little pieces fit together. And may we help to provide sustenance for all of the rest of the world by caring for that. Amen.